Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Ole. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Ole with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed. Whether that's reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language in your country of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il. You can also, if you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us in the chat with any questions, comments, concerns, and topic requests you might have. Additionally, you can see all of our previous lessons on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Ole. The first result should be a link to our playlist of over 150 past lessons, 26,000 views. You can watch any of our past lessons for free on demand and write in the comments, not just saying hi, but also any topics you'd like us to cover. That's also a great reminder that you can always check that if we've covered something in the past, maybe we haven't done in a while, maybe we did slightly differently, but we've done quite a lot of topics. That being said, this spring we have some new topics we've never covered before. So we're really excited for that, but we do have some available slots for new topics. So if you have any ideas, please write to us. We do our best to accommodate as many as possible within understandable constraints. With now 246 people on this call, which is always amazing. How many people have decided to join together to learn modern Hebrew around the world? Really isn't any other opportunity like this, folks. So thank you so much again for joining. As promised, this is the first of at least two, maybe three lessons to get you prepared for the holiday. When usually you talk about Jewish holidays or holidays in Israel, you say the holiday, some people think it's Independence Day. It's a good answer. Some people may think it's the High Holy Days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim. No. The holiday is the most celebrated holiday in Israel and in the Jewish world, Pesach, aka Passover. We're going to talk more about it. If you're already feeling the nervousness and anxiety of getting ready for the holiday, number one, you're not alone. I was in the grocery store the other day, and the guy in front of me was talking to the cashier, a regular person who goes to this small local grocery store, about how he and his wife have already been prepping for the last 2 months. And she looks at him and says in Hebrew, "You're crazy, right?" And he goes, "No, it just makes sense. And our daughter, who's abroad right now," and he leaves, and we look at each other and like, "No, he's crazy." But that being said, Purim, the last Jewish holiday, is over officially now that Shushan Purim, the day after celebrated in Jerusalem and several other cities, is over. And just like that, go into any grocery store in Israel, go into any supermarket in Israel. The biggest thing you're going to see when you walk in the store is going to be chomrei nikui. If you don't know what that is, that's what we're talking about tonight. We are talking all about spring cleaning today, not just because it's spring cleaning and that's a thing around the world, but especially in Israel. The moment Purim is over, we have exactly 1 month to get ready for Pesach, and it's a marathon. It's a little bit of a sprint, but it's also a marathon. And the very first thing we talk about is spring cleaning. So that's going to be what today is all about, not just cleaning materials and cleaning products, but things around the house that might go wrong, and what do you call them, and who do you call for what. And Wednesday's class, for those of you who join us, is going to be all about trading secrets with each other, trading tips on, can you recommend a handyman or a plumber or an installator? Do you have tips on cleaning this or that? Where can you find a deal on this or that? Trading home ec tips, which frankly is always invaluable resource making a new home in a country, especially here in Israel. Excuse me. The top of the hour, in addition to reminding you about that and answering your questions, I'll tell you about next week's class as well. So without further ado, let's get started with today's spreadsheet. As always, one last bit of housekeeping. Apropos today, spring cleaning, housekeeping as well. If you have any questions about the topic we're about to start, please write it in the Q&A. Anything in the chat I will be reviewing after class, but the Q&A will only be reviewed for this class. So let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see. So first off, let's talk about all the words that have to do with cleaning. And we're going to get to specific actions with regards to cleaning, but I just want to start with the root, right? The words that we use for all, just like with all other Hebrew words, um, have two parts. One is the form, whether it's a verb or noun or adjective, and the other is the root, the shoresh. And words that have to do with cleaning, appropriately so, all have the same root. And we've talked about this many times and we'll continue to talk about this, how Hebrew is a very efficient and economical language, in that related words usually are known not just by their definition, but also because they have the same root. In this case, nun kuf hey. Anytime a word has the root nun kuf hey, chances are it has to do something with cleaning. Okay? That's that. Let's look at some words. First off, the verb to clean, lenakot. Okay, lenakot means to clean. The act of cleaning is nikui. Okay, and we've talked about this before, what we call the verbal noun, the ing of something. To clean is called the infinitive, to do something, and the gerund, the ing, the verbal noun, is nikui. Okay, cleaning. Right? It's considered a noun in Hebrew. A word that's very much similar and related but means something different is nikayon. Nikayon means cleanliness. It does not mean cleaning. And the difference is when you go to, for example, a public park or a garden or anything that's a public area in Israel, and it has a sign that says lishmor al hanikayon, right? Lishmor al means to watch over or protect, and nikayon, cleanliness, right? It's not saying watch over the cleaning. You're not watching someone cleaning. You're watching over the cleanliness of the place, right? Meaning pick up after yourselves, pick up after others if they didn't. That's the difference between nikui and nikayon. It sounds similar, but they're two different words. Don't confuse them. Nikui is the act of cleaning. Nikayon, what happens after something is clean, the state of cleanliness. The adjective clean, naki, right? You can hear and visually see. These all have the same root. Nun, kuf, hey. Even if you don't see that hey, you can see and hear the same root again and again. And then finally, a minakeh. Minakeh is a male cleaner, minaka, a female cleaner, minakim, minakot. We've talked about this before, and it's worth repeating here as well. In Hebrew, sorry, just 1 second. In Hebrew, one of the biggest differences between biblical Hebrew and prayer Hebrew and modern Hebrew is the use of the present tense. And the present tense in modern Hebrew is, we have a term for it, and it's called zman hoveh, literally present time. But we also have another term for it, which we've learned a whole separate lesson called benoni. Benoni refers to the fact that the present tense in Hebrew is also the participle, right? A participle, we've talked about this before, we've had classes on this. Participle can be both a noun, verb, and adjective. The person who is cleaning, the actor who is doing the cleaning, also happens to be the present tense. Okay? That's one of the biggest differences between modern Hebrew and ancient Hebrew, is the use of the participle as the present tense. He cleans and he is cleaning. That word, hu menakeh, is also the same word we use for the person cleaning, i.e. the cleaner. Right? Just an important grammatical note to put in there. Okay, let's keep going and let's do a tour of a home. All homes are different in Israel. Most Israelis live in a dira, in an apartment, but there are some certain terms, just like what we do all the time with Cafe Ole, excuse me, where I'm going to focus on terms. Number one, you aren't necessarily going to be able to know on your own. Number two, you probably wouldn't have learned in formal Jewish education, let alone maybe even Hebrew education outside of Israel. And number three, that aren't necessarily easy to look up. But these are words you're going to hear all the time, whether you're looking for an apartment or you're trying to describe to someone who's coming to repair something where the problem is. No less important when we're talking about spring cleaning is also repairs. The first word is not Hebrew, but we use it all the time, is the boydem. Boydem in Hebrew is properly called aliyat tikra, but the boydem is the, as it's written here, the storage space just above the ceiling. Many older apartments and even recent apartments will have a big um, empty space. Sometimes it's in the kitchen, sometimes it's in the living room, and it's a big space that's meant for storage. And you'll see people put their suitcases in there. They'll put dishes. They'll put their Pesach dishes in there. They'll put things that they meant to put away a while ago, the boydom. And people often look for an apartment or real estate with a big boydom for storage because people don't have storage units or they don't have much other closet space. But a boydom is a great space for storing things. Another word that doesn't translate or don't translate it. And we've talked about this before. Words that sound like English but aren't English. This is a great one. Galeria. Galeria is not a gallery, folks, when we're talking about the apartment, the anatomy or geography of an apartment. A galeria is a loft, or for those of you who are more familiar with the term, a mezzanine apartment, meaning that you have one floor and then you have a floor that's connected either by stairs or by a ladder or some other means, which is usually the sleeping area. Okay, a galeria, when we talk about housing, an apartment is not a gallery. You don't have an art gallery in your house. That is not what a galeria means. It means a loft. Sometimes it will be written loft, but often it's galeria. Another term, not Hebrew, but it's been around for a long time, and we use this in other places as well, is prosdor. Prosdor is a foyer or foyer, however you want to pronounce it. It's the hallway within an apartment. Okay. Prosdor is also the term that we use to describe the corridor, just like a foyer is a type of a corridor, the corridor that leads into Jerusalem coming from the coast. Right? Prosdor Yerushalayim is the whole area leading up into the mountains into Jerusalem on Kvish Echad, on Highway 1. You could think of that as everywhere from Beit Shemesh in the west till you get to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, Prosdor. Okay, it's also any kind of corridor or foyer when it comes to living spaces. A misdaron is a hallway within a building, different than a prosdor. You wouldn't call a prosdor the thing that you go through to get between apartments, different apartment units in a building or offices. That's a misdaron, a hallway. Those of you who are looking for apartments, we've talked about this before in real estate, so I just wanted to put this in here. A cheder meruvach is a spacious room, meaning it's got obviously lots of space. And a dira or pit is a rear-facing apartment. Some people, when looking for an apartment, it's not just about how much space there is and how much light there is. It's also how far away it is from the busy street. So if you live here in Tel Aviv, for example, you often want to find a dira or pit to make sure that you're on the courtyard side facing away from the street if it's a busy street and you don't want a lot of noise. Some things that other people do with spring cleaning is they buy new sheets. Good time to do it, a good time to switch over, especially as the weather gets warmer. So we have some regular appliances also included in this list for you today. We've gone over these before, but always important to include them. Stinim. Stinim are sheets sold separately. Think of like a top sheet or anything like that, but stinim are sheets. Sadin in gumi is a fitted sheet. Okay, meaning that it's the one that goes over the mattress and it has gumi, rubber on the corners so that it best holds at the corners. The difference between sdinim and our next word, matzaim, is very simple. Sdinim are sold separately as sheets. Matzaim are sheets sold as a set. Okay, that's the main difference. In Israel, we typically don't find homes that have both a bottom sheet, meaning the one that fits around the mattress, a top sheet, and then a comforter. That's a lot of layers for a very warm country. for that's warm most of the year. Instead, you usually have a sadinim gumi, a fitted bottom sheet, or simply a sadin, or you have sadinim gumi and you sleep with a sadin, a sheet, a thinner sheet, or you sleep with a smicha, a blanket or a duvet, over which you put on a tzipa. Tzipa comes from the same verb meaning to cover something, to enrobe something. So a tzipa is a duvet cover, and a tzipit is a pillow cover. Right? And smichat puch, just as smicha is a blanket or duvet, but smichat puch is specifically a down comforter or duvet. Even if it's made out of synthetic material, that's a much thicker one that you may have on your beds, certainly when it's cold out. Okay, some more important terms before we get to some home repair materials is faucets and sinks and things like that, and kitchen. Things, again, you're not going to either look up. I'm not going through everything. And that's an important point, right? And the way I always think about this is, did I learn all those years learning Hebrew in day school and Hebrew school and university, did I ever learn the verbs to pull or to push? And the answer is no. I learned all sorts of other terms. I learned a refrigerator. I learned oven, right? But I didn't learn other everyday things, things as simple as to push and to pull, right? So that's a lot of the words that are coming here are words you aren't necessarily going to be learning in your own ulpan, wherever you are, but we use all the time. Case in point, kiraim. Kiraim, spelled like this, folks, and it's always important. Spelling is destiny. Even if it sounds like something else, kiraim means a stovetop when spelled like this. Stovetop kiraim, it's usually referring to the fact that there are at least two burners. Aim at the end means dual, but it also means the different parts of it as well as how many you have. Kiur is a sink. Berez is a faucet or a tap. It's the same word. And then we get to something very important in Israel. With some exceptions, almost every home has at least one of the following things: a dud shemesh and a dud chashmal. This is especially important with installation, which we'll get to in a little bit. Excuse me. Dud shemesh and dud chashmal. Dud shemesh, after I forget what year, all new homes are required to be fitted with a dud shemesh. Many homes have chosen to be retrofitted with a dud shemesh, because what is a dud shemesh? It's a solar water heater, right? You know that look. It's a big white tank that sits on the top of an apartment building, and it has on it at least two solar energy panels. The panel absorbs solar energy, it heats up the water in the tank, and you have hot water. Okay. The advantage of that is, number one, it's solar energy, excuse me. So you're not paying on it. And so long as it's a sunny day, you have quite a lot of water that's heated for you already, hot water, as opposed to a dud chashmal. Some buildings are older. It's also still winter in Israel, as much as we're in a mid to late winter heat streak, which always happens, heat wave, excuse me. Some people need a dud chashmal. I certainly need it, even as sunny as it gets here in Tel Aviv. A dud chashmal is an electric water heater. This is the one that you're either going to switch on manually, or you're going to get a sha'on ledud chashmal, a timer for electric heater. Sha'on is a watch, it's a clock, and it's also a timer. So you get everything all at once. And these are ones that you can pre-program to turn on and off at certain times. Don't ask me how to do it. I still don't know how to do it. I'm still between my dud shemesh, and when I absolutely need hot water, I just press the button. But that's how it works in Israel, mass majority of places. And of course, the other good reason to get a sha'on for your dud chashmal is if you don't turn it off, it does have the tendency to explode. And you always will know when something explodes, because all of a sudden you'll start hearing what sounds like rain on a very sunny day or a clear day, and you look outside and there's a geyser happening over a building, and that's because someone left on their dud chashmal too long. We're not the only country in the world that has a dud chashmal. Many countries, especially in Europe, have it. But a dud shemesh is one of the few things that Israel is known for around the world as having. I think it's somewhere around 90% of homes have a dud shemesh, and thus can take care of hot water, assuming that there's sunlight to fuel it. Now let's get to some home repair and things that go wrong and who helps fix it. First one is a madbir. A madbir is the person who you call when you need help with hadbara. Those of you who already are thinking about the holiday I keep talking about, Pesach, what's the name of one of the 10 plagues? As we say in Hebrew, Makot Mitzrayim. Makkah is both a strike in modern Hebrew, but in biblical Hebrew, it also means a plague. Devil. What was devil? It was one of those ones that had bugs, right? In modern Hebrew, hadbara is pest control. And the person who takes care of pest control is a madbir. If you live here in Tel Aviv, there's a very famous madbir who drives around in a pickup truck with puppet cockroaches in the back who are animatronic, and he sings songs about exterminating jukim or charakim, cockroaches or in general insects, to various tunes. And he drives throughout the city as everyone knows him because he's that popular and has such a great marketing campaign, right? This time of year, especially as it gets warmer, the bugs come out, you may need to hire a mudbeel. Or around the house, you need a shiputz, or we would usually say shiputzim, the plural, which I'm going to write here. Shiputzim. Renovations. Shipu. Let's write that here because normally there isn't just one thing to do, right? Shiputzim are just renovations. They could be small things, they could be big things. Right? But that's a word you hear all the time in Israel. There's always something that needs to be renovated. And the person who does the renovation, and this is an important term, folks, is a shiputznik. Shiputznik combines two things, shiputz, renovation, and nik. Nik is a suffix. We talked about prefixes and suffixes the other week. It's not Hebrew. Nik comes from Slavic languages, and we attach it to something to indicate that they are a part of it, or that's their livelihood, or that's their identity. So, for example, someone who lives on a kibbutz is known as a kibbutznik, right? Of course, you can say in Hebrew, chavel kibbutz, a member of the kibbutz, but a kibbutznik is what we say all the time. Or someone who lives on a moshav, a moshavnik, in this case, a shiputznik, the person whose livelihood is to do shiputzim, renovations. There is a difference, however. A shiputznik is more of a handyman, right? A renovator, you're thinking of something very serious, and that's more of a kablan shiputzim, a contractor, a renovation contractor, right? Kablan is a contractor. Shiputznik is usually a handyman. It's someone who can come and fix a few things. There's a hole in the wall. There's exactly what you hear when you think of the word handyman or handywoman. That were the case. Okay. What about your door? Man'ul. Man'ul, no less important than the door itself. Delet. Man'ul is a lock, and the person who comes to fix the lock or install a lock is a manulan. Right? If you live in Israel, chances are your door and all your neighbors' doors are plastered with stickers and magnets of man'ulanim, of locksmiths advertising their wares. Man'ul is a locksmith. One of the classic issues in Israel, especially in the winter, when it's cold outside and warm inside, and you're trying to keep the heat in, but our homes are not insulated, is the issue of ovesh. Talked about this before. It is not a judgment on you or how you keep your home, but ovesh is a real thing in Israel, black especially. It doesn't necessarily mean anything is wrong with you. It is the way buildings are built. Ovesh normally happens. Ovesh can be mold not just on your windowsills and things like that. Excuse me, it's also the term we use for mold on food. And if something is moldy, it's me'ubash. And one of the best ways to deal with me'ubash with something that has ovesh is a sofeg lachut, right? Normally, the cause of it in Israeli homes is because of the amount of lachut, moisture or humidity in a home, because you're trying to trap in the warmth, but you're also trapping in moisture. And as a result, you need something to take out some of the moisture, a dehumidifier, if you will. But a sofeg lachut is not a dehumidifier in the same sense. Sofeg means absorb. So it's a chemical uh, uh, process that removes it usually with a tray with some material in it that traps the and turns it into water. The solid material into water. That's a great one to know. If you don't know about sofeg lachut, definitely order some if you're having that issue in your home. Okay, let's get into some of the other people who help and then some of the common things that happen in your homes. First off, the difference between we had a shiputznik, right? A handyman, we had a manulan, a locksmith. Now we have two names, instalator and shravrav. Okay, so first off, instalator sounds like what it is in English because it is. An instalator is an installer. This is someone who's coming to install things in your homes, not necessarily to fix things in your home. So think of installing electrical uh, wire, right? Installing a lamp, installing a toilet, or any other heavy appliances that need to be connected up with electricity or gas or water, anything like that. Instalator. Okay, and that's what you're going to look for. And we talk about it in a little bit. When you're looking for an instalator, that's what you're going to be the term you're going to use. The difference is when we're only talking about plumbing. And when we're only talking about plumbing, you want a shravrav, a great word. If only we could use this term on a regular basis, it's just got a great sound to it, right? Shravrav. That is a plumber. Okay, let's get into how do we name some things around the house, right? We're doing all our spring cleaning. Let's air out our dirty laundry, as it were. But instead of dirty laundry, let's talk about some of the things that are there. I'm actually going to switch down to that part, and then we're going to come back up. Okay. We're going to talk about where you find help in fixing all these things in addition to the people. So, some things you need to clean up around the house right now. Chaydakim. Talked about this word before. Chaydakim is bacteria. Chaydakim is created from two words. Chay, life, living, and dak, thin. So thin life, bacteria. Mold, we just talked about. Ovesh, let's talk about some other ones. Ketem is a stain. Tamim are stains. Ketem maim is a water stain or a water ring, let's say on wood or something else. Shuman is both fat, but it's also grease. Okay. Srita is a scratch. Chaluda is rust. Avak is dust. Avnit, a very common thing in Israel, is lime scale. If you have ever cooked with typically with steel products or aluminum products, or you have a kumkum in your home, an electric water heater, after a certain amount of time, you will see some white material at the bottom of it. It's called avnit, lime scale. Easily removed. We'll talk about the words you need to know to remove it. Stima is a clog, as in you need a shravrav to take care of a stima, a clog in your pipes. Pitzutz b'tzaneret mayim is a water pipe break. Pitzutz means a explosion, right? So it's not just that you have a clog, but the pipe burst. Sedek, a crack. Nizila, leak. Okay, let's get to some solutions for some of these horrible things. Not so horrible things, but everyday things. And one last one, a ketzel chashmal. Ketzel chashmal, a short circuit. Ketzel meaning short, chashmal, electricity. And the person who takes care of a ketzel chashmal, a chashmalai, an electrician. Okay, First off, where are we going to find a lot of these solutions? Yes, you can go to your supermarket and you're going to see all sorts of cleaning materials, but you're also going to go to a tamburia or tamburia. Either one is the right way to say it. Tamburia or tamburia is a hardware and paint store. Why is it called a hardware and paint store, and why is it called Tamburia? Tamburia is the name of a paint company. It's the name of one of Israel's oldest paint companies, in fact, called Tambul. Started in the 1930s by Jewish immigrants. It started out as having an exclusive contract to the British forces buying the land. It then stayed as a company. It became one of the biggest paint companies in Israel. It was even accused of antitrust issues. And just like, for example, and grocery stores that have Coca-Cola signs, or bars that have Heineken or other beer names as their insignia on their signage and on their materials inside. Tambul did a lot of their initial advertising by sponsoring signage, right? So if you want to open a hardware store, Tambul, in exchange for you selling their paint, would give you a free sign. So after a while, all the hardware stores in Israel, at least the majority of them, just were known as a tambulia. Whether they sold tambul or not, whether they sold other paints or not, they had the tambul sign. So it meant that they're all called a tambulia. Okay. Obviously, there are other stores out there. There is Ace, just like Ace Hardware in America. There's Home Center. There's other hardware stores in Israel. But the generic name that we call hardware stores in Israel are Tambulia, based on this one company. What's the name Tambul? It comes from the word tambourine. The original logo of the paint company was a boy playing the drums on a paint can. That's the name Tambul. Okay. At a paint store, at a hardware store like a Tambulia, you're going to find some of the following things. Again, some of these things you would never learn if you were just learning Hebrew in a day school or university or yeshiva. Maybe you would. My guess is most of us hadn't, myself included. A nail, not on your fingers, but the thing you nail into a wall is a masmel. And the thing that you nail it with is a patish. A screw is a boreg, and the thing that you put the screw in is a mavreg, a screwdriver. Tzvat is a pair of pliers, and a wrench is a mafteach bragim. Literally, mafteach is a key, and bragim, we just said boreg was a screw, bragim is the plural. So a screw key, meaning the thing that you use to as a key for screws. A mavreg puts in the screwdriver, a wrench can take it out. In addition to that, I'm going to need some help from the people at the Tambulia as to what product helps you with what issues. So we talked about the names of the issues, but what's the action that goes with those issues? Mechate. Mechate means disinfect, right? If a product, a chomer nikui, a cleaning product, and we'll see that word again in a second, says on the label mechate, it means that it disinfects. If it says mashmid, it means it destroys or obliterates, right? Usually this has to do with antibacterial things, right? Mechate and mashmid. What if it says masir? For example, if you're looking for something that does masir, removes what? Shumanim, a grease or fat remover. Let's say splatter on your oven door or on your kiraim, on your stovetop, right? I'm not going to give you every term there is under the sun of cleaning products. You can put these together. Mashmid chaydakim, right? Mashmid chaydakim, destroys or disinfects bacteria, right? Mesir shumanim, or mesir tamim, removes stains, stain remover. What if it's a mitahil? Mitahil purifies, right? It could be a mitahil mayim, a water purifier, or anything else like that. Or it could be mavrik. It brightens or polishes. Let's say it's about brightening or polishing glass or metals, right? These are some of the very common verbs you're going to see on cleaning products to describe what action they do. Okay. And then finally, I have a few more here. I forgot sedek and nizila, crack and a leak. Let's look at some specific cleaning materials that I at least have never seen in America, or at least called these in America or North America. Let's be more general. They may exist in other countries in the world, but they are very commonly known in Israel. Before getting to your questions and talking about, of course, a little bit of Wednesday's class. So first off, this term I keep calling about chomer nikui. Chomer is any kind of material. Nikui, we said, is cleaning. So if you need a cleaning material or a cleaning product in Hebrew, chomer nikui, compound noun. Okay. One of the most common ones you will see everywhere, and everyone has this on sale right now because, again, everyone is in a spring cleaning frenzy, a month away from Pesach, now even less, is economica. Economica has nothing to do with economics, nothing whatsoever. It is a genericized trademark, and it has to do with a cleaning material that at its basic form contains chlorine bleach. If you look on the label in Israel on some of the big names, it'll say in English one line that says cleaning agent with chlorine bleach. It's technically not chlorine bleach in that if you spray it on something, it's not going to turn white. It's what we call sodium hypochlorite. Don't make me go into a chemistry class. Just know that if you're looking for something with the power of chlorine or bleach when cleaning it, meaning you want something that is going to, say it with me, mashmid chaydakim or mashmid ovesh, right? Destroying bacteria or mold. You want something with economica, right? Economica is a great all day, all purpose cleaning material, chomer nikui in Israel. The other one, and I remember getting into a chemistry debacle with several participants the last time we taught this class because they wanted to correct me because honestly, I don't know the terms. The chemistry is not my background, but I do know sabon and al sabon. In Israel, more frequently, you will see both sabon and al sabon. Al sabon for many years was translated as soapless soap or soap-free soap. It's not quite the case. I did a little bit more research into it. Sabon simply means soap in Hebrew, just like it does in a lot of languages. Sabon is soap with sodium hydroxide, and al sabon is soap with potassium hydroxide. What is the difference? I will let you look it up. But basically, one has the classic lye or lime that has been used for thousands of years when people realized how you can make a material that cleaned things, and mesil shumanim removes fats and greases. Sabon and al sabon. The idea being that al sabon, the one with potassium hydroxide, you can use a lot less and it goes a lot longer. That's the very basic definition of it. If you're coming after me in the comments because I made a mistake here, sabon al sabon. One has sodium hydroxide, the other has potassium hydroxide. That's as far of an expert I'm going to make. Get at it. Finally, before I get to your questions and talk about next week's class and Wednesday's class, a sample of what we're going to do on Wednesday. I mentioned that Wednesday's class, our Cafe Ole conversations, which all of you, all 301 of you, amazing, are invited to. We are going to take these words. I'm going to add more questions as conversation starters and answers to it. So this is just a sample of what are the type of things you're going to ask each other. אפשר להמליץ על שיפוצניק, חשמלאי, אינסטלטור, שרברב, right? Can you recommend a fill in the blank? Or do you have a good or reliable installator, shiputznik, handyman, plumber, electrician, locksmith, and so forth, right? Many of the times, many of the times we're looking for someone to help us with home repair. It's usually through referral and word of mouth. So a great way to do it is know how to ask your neighbors in Hebrew, right? It may not be you know someone because the other person you would otherwise ask doesn't know Hebrew as well. But you can ask your neighbor and become good friends with them by asking, do you have a reliable, so forth. Okay, this is just a sample of what we're going to do on Wednesday. Those of you who have already signed up or do sign up in the next 23 hours, as we do send out a reminder at least 24 hours in advance of the Wednesday class, you will be getting an additional spreadsheet with more vocabulary and conversation starters, including things like אפשר להמליץ על שיפוצניק and so forth, right? You're going to ask questions about the Tambulia. You're going to ask about tips on things. You're going to ask about where do you find the best this or that. Excuse me, that is Wednesday's class. And before I get to questions, as I see we have a bunch in the Q&A, I just want to be sure to tell you about next week's class, which is, let me just open up the spreadsheet. Next week's class is going to be one of my favorite topics, and I know one of yours, media literacy, which simply means how do I read mainstream Israeli news, media, even at a beginner's level. We're going to look at the geography and anatomy of mainstream media sources, the headlines, the subheadlines, what words to look for, what words I can avoid, and topics that, if they're of interest to me, I can keep reading at my own pace. It's a great way to remind ourselves to be in touch with the news, because news changes all the time here in Israel, and that English language coverage usually does not. It takes much longer for it to cover. Best to get ready and understand in Hebrew. With that, I'm going to stop here. So I see we have a lot of questions in the Q&A. I'm going to do as many as I can. And just as a reminder that this spreadsheet and the recording will be sent to you in the next day or so. Okay, I'm going to start with the ones that have to do with this class, and we have extra time, ones that aren't. Would you use Minakeh for a generic cleaning product, or is it only the person who's cleaning? Great question. Minakeh is only referring to the person who cleans. It's not a cleaner. The cleaner, as in the product, is, as we said just now, chomel nikui. Okay, great question. Is Mizdaron the correct spelling? Yes, it is. It just sounds like a Zayin, but it is Mizdaron. What is the max time you can leave on the electric water heater? That's a great question. All of them have different settings. Some of them are stronger than others. Mine only needs about 15, 30 minutes for it to get really hot. And then I have at least a couple hours worth of hot water. Some require longer. Usually older ones require longer. That being said, you don't really want an old dud chashmal. It's just more likely to have a geyser type situation. What is the connection between tzipah and tzipiyat le-Yeshua? Wow, that's a connection. So tzipah and tzipit, right? Litzapot, which from which these both verbs come from, tzadi pei he, right? The shoresh tzadi pei he also gives us the verb litzapot, to expect, litzpot, to look at or to watch. But it also gives us the adjective mitzupe. Mitzupe means covered. If you buy a chocolate bar in Israel, it's going to say chatif something, mitzupe beshokolad, right? Let's say it's Snickers, right? Any international or local chocolate bar, not just a whole solid chocolate bar, but like, you know what I'm talking about. Let's say it's Snickers. It will have in Hebrew a description of what it is, and it will say something like chatif, nougat, caramel, vipotnim, right? All the different things that are in a Snickers inside. Mitzupe beshokolad, covered, enrobed in chocolate. So tzipa is something that covers. In this case, a tzipa covers a duvet, and a tzipit covers a pillow. Okay, that's what that means in our context. What is the difference when you see each term lo oved, lo poel, lo takin? Great question. So let me write these all down. Lo, need to make this a little bit bigger. Sorry, just a second. Let me write this in. Someone is asking, it has to do with especially what we're talking about right now. Lo oved, lo poel, lo takin. All of these can be translated into English as not working. Okay. If anything is described as lo poel, lo oved, lo takin, it simply means it's not working. These are all synonyms of meaning the same thing. Okay. What was the word you used for cockroach? I thought we said juk. Yes, you can say juk. There's also makak, and then there's rakim in general for bugs. Okay. Meubash. Meubash is the word for moldy. Let me find it up here. Sorry, just a second. There it is. We already went over it. There you are. Meubash. The root is the root is ein bet shin, as in ovesh. So meubash with a bet. Is the name Dvorah related to the ones for pest control? Dvorah is related to the word dvor, which means a bee. Dvorah is also a bee in Hebrew. Dvorim are bees. You can think of it as obviously a type of dever, a type of bug, not necessarily that you need to call pest control for, but related. Would you use stima to describe the human version of a stima, which is a clog? If you can figure out what I mean by that, no. Stima is not the word that we use for constipation. Stima has to do with a clog in a pipe or in something like that. Stima, constipation is a different word. That word in Hebrew comes from the verb la'atzor, to stop. Okay, but you can look that up. But stima is not used to describe a human situation, i.e. constipation. How do I find receive vocabulary sheets from the YouTube classes? Go to our YouTube channel. Any of our lessons, you'll go into the description, click more, you'll see a link to the vocabulary sheet. So is chanut lechomrei binyan not used anymore for hardware store? No, that's not what I said, right? Tamburia, where's our term? Tamburia is a catch-all term for a hardware store. If you're looking for a hardware store in Israel and you type into Google Maps, Chanut lechomrei binyan, you're probably going to get to a store that's about a couple kilometers or miles, whichever one you wanted to use, away from you. If you type in a tamburia, chances are there's one right around the corner from you. A tamburia is smaller and it's local. Chanut lechomrei binyan already sounds like a big store, literally a store for building materials. Think of it like the difference between, for those of you who are American, your local branch of Ace Hardware versus a home center out in the suburbs that has big planks of wood and a whole garden center, right? Tamburia is smaller and more local and more immediate fixes. To clean and to wash, we use them somewhat interchangeably in English, but what is the case in Hebrew? That deserves its own lesson because we have several different verbs that mean to clean and to wash that are translated as that in English. I'm going to note to do that in a future class because it is a lot of words. To clean, to wash. Good point. To clean, to wash. Thank you for that suggestion. Chomel doesn't have to do with a unit of measurement, like you wouldn't have a chomel of something. No, no. Chomel is material. It has nothing to do with measurement. Okay. What is the term for hydrogen peroxide? I honestly don't know. That's not necessarily a common thing that you find in people's homes, but you can find it in pharmacies. I don't know it off the top of my head. Sorry about that, but you can definitely look that up. If online dictionaries don't work for you folks, another tool we've talked about before is Wikipedia. For major topics like hydrogen peroxide, my bet is if you go to the English um, uh, page for hydrogen peroxide and you click on the language helper at the top, not the built-in dictionary in your website, but Wikipedia's translation service. And one topic will have multiple translations because remember, folks, not everyone speaks English in this world. I'm sure it's going to give you how you say hydrogen peroxide in Hebrew. Why can't I buy something like Clorox Laundry Bleach to whiten clothes? Okay, so in Israel, Clorox is not necessarily a brand name that you have, but you have other things that, if we're talking about different verbs, you're going to look for something that, in this case, malbin, whitens, bleaches. Okay? The act of whitening or bleaching something is malbin. Okay? Malbin. Coming from the same root as the color lavan, white. So malbin is the thing that causes something to become lavan, a whitener, or a bleacher, right? Right. So if you're looking for materials that do that, it needs to say malbin on it. Will the questions be in Wednesday's email? Yes. If you have already signed up for Wednesday's conversation class, you will get a reminder and it will have the additional vocabulary and conversation starters attached to it. If you sign up last minute, you will not be getting it. You'll have to get it as we start class. Don't worry, you'll all get the material. It's just who gets it sooner than later. Okay, we're quickly. Don't they usually say installato for plumber? Great question. So that's why I went to the efforts to explain the difference between them. Yes, people will often confuse an installato with a shravrav, an installer with a plumber, because oftentimes an installato will be installing devices that require water, like a sink, like a toilet, like a shower, like a faucet. But there's still a difference between the person who installs it and the person who comes to fix things like a stima or a nizila or anything else that has to do with once it's in there, the plumbing, the pipes that revolve around it. Great question. Can someone say chashmalnik for electrician? No, we say chashmalai. That's just that's one that really has stuck, a chashmalai, and that's proper Hebrew. Right? Um, איך קוראים למי שמתקן סדק בקיר? Who's the person who comes to fix a crack in the wall? A shiputznik. A shiputznik is someone who will come with plaster or caulk or whatever it may be and paint. A shiputznik is a handyman, really for small things. Great question. Um, what's the difference between a tzipa and kisui? We say tzipa when it comes to a pillow cover that goes over your um, pillows on your bed. What does a set of sheets contain, if not also a bottom sheet? Usually a tzipa and a tzipit. A tzipa meaning the duvet cover, and the tzipit the pillow cover. That's usually what comes in a matzah, um, uh, a set of sheets together. Okay? What is a pillow in Hebrew? Karit. Okay. Okay. Got to unfortunately wrap up at this point. So again, toda rabah, thank you all for joining. This recording and the spreadsheet that we went through will be available to you in the next day or so as it's uploaded to YouTube. Wednesday's class, please join us. We'll be going over these topics in breakout rooms, so you'll be able to practice speaking and listening in Hebrew with each other. And next week, like I said, we're going to be reviewing the news together, picking one article in one media outlet and reading it together and understanding the anatomy of a news source in Israel and how to best navigate it, even at most beginner's level. So definitely, if you're a beginner, you should be joining next week's class. You're going to be understanding how to keep up with the news, even at a very beginner's level, but all levels, of course, are welcome. Until next time, toda rabah, thank you all for joining, and see you all very soon. להתראות.